All right. Okay, we could get started. Thank you, Mabel, for the handoff and everyone for joining us today. It's so great to see like a full room. My name is Alex Rodriguez. I'm the Good Food Purchasing Program Expansion Manager here at CIFPAC, and I'm eager to share the next hour and 15 minutes with you all. And just if you could actually share your name and like where you're tuning in from in the chat. It's always nice to see like who's in the room with us, and seeing, if there's any, connection that we can make. But yeah, definitely please share in the chat. And then also too, if you have any questions, you could also lay them out there and we'll get started. We are here tuning in to serving up sustainability, community institutions, climate commitments, but overall it's going to be talking about our purchasing commitments that are better serving like our food and planet. And I'm very eager and hopefully very soon going to introduce our panelists too, that I'm going to actually share more about them. And then also too, I do want to go over like a brief just overview of like what we're going to go over. Before we get into it, I do want to provide again like the agenda. Oh, give me 1 second just to make sure. Okay, so starting with today, we are going to go over, obviously introducing the session, and we're going to meet our panelists. Really briefly, I do want to welcome them in and give them a chance to have an introduction of themselves. And then I do also kind of want to go over a brief overview of the Good Food Purchasing Program and, what that is, either if that's your first time hearing about it, maybe you do already know a couple, details about it, but I do also just kind of want to make sure for those who are tuning in for the first time, to be able to kind of learn about the program and how that has been implemented through our city and Cook County like adoptions at different meal sites, but also too with some other private institutions. And then we're going to open up the floor with our panel discussions. And then again, we do have a section at the end that's going to cover Q&A. But again, if you do have any questions too, you're more than welcome to share them in the chat. We'll keep an eye out and then we'll be able to answer them during that portion. And then, yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited to get into our panel discussion and just learn about all like the progress, successes, and then also challenges that come with purchasing food and just also, making climate commitments and just procuring food sustainably. With that ado, I am going to actually welcome our guest. And then before we get started, I'm going to actually start off with passing it over to Justine. Justine, if you just want to just introduce yourself, your institution or organization, and then you can pass it over to the next panelist. And then we'll wrap it back up to me. Thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Justine Britton. I am the Food and Nutrition Program Manager at Chicago Public Schools. Alex, did you want us to give a little background of our institution now or wait?
We're going to wait.
Okay.
We're going to get into that. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Then I will stop there. I will bounce it over to Erica.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Erica Block, and I'm the Senior Director of Food Nutrition Services for Rush University Medical Center and Rush Oak Park Hospital, and excited to join everyone here today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Smith. I'm the Senior Director of Food and Commissary Services at the Cook County Jail.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Antonio Porter, Director of Programming for individuals in custody inside Cook County Jail for the Cook County Sheriff's Office. And I'll pass it back to Alex.
Great, thank you. I'm so excited to get into our panel discussion later and just learn more about all the institutions and organizations that are in alignment with the Good Food Purchasing Program and how that's also been in alignment too with like a lot of their initiatives and just hearing more about their backgrounds. So hopefully everyone here is excited as well. And yeah, we'll get into it. I do want us to kind of think about how first, like how everyone here, whatever your role is, and just also to, whoever you are, where you come from, whether you grow food, you provide food, or you source food, or even just something as simple as eating food too, how we all also have like a role in our food supply chain system and how some way or some shape or form, we're all integrated in that food supply system. And oftentimes as like receivers on the other end of the food supply chain, we usually don't get to actually see or have an opportunity to see like what that transparency is behind closed doors, we might understand like the more overview of it, but when we actually start digging below the surface, we kind of start opening up and exploring, those curtains to transparency, where we start seeing history of discriminatory and racist policies and practices, much of which a lot of like Black and Indigenous and people of color are disproportionately exploited, whether in low wage or dangerous work conditions in the food industry. We oftentimes also see like the negative effects on climates too in our planet. So we definitely want to also think about how, these institutions that, serve community meal sites, meal programs or offer food have an immense power over how we can, change and shift the way that we spend money on food. And then also too, with a lot of the community meal providers, we are able to shift our food dollars into a system that promotes racial and social equity and transparency and accountability. So with the Metro Chicago Good Food Purchasing Initiative, we're pretty much working a lot with like these community food sites and food providers to purchase and serve food that advances a good food system for all. In part of that, we envision, a food system where our community institutions support and contribute to building that collective power of those who have been structurally and, powerless to excluded from control over food production, access, to imagine, but rebuild, and tend to a liberatory food shed. And just also too, just thinking how, those who have, maybe lost like their power or their voice too, how they could also see where, the gaps are within like our food supply chain, and seeing how we could also shift into certain different pathways. So in partnership too with the city of Chicago, and then also the Center for Good Food Purchasing, Cook County's public meal programs, but I also want to emphasize too with some of our private institutions and other anchor institutions too, several sites have been implementing the Good Food Purchasing Program, also known as GFPP, with focusing on a racially, socially, and transparent and accountability system. And by doing so, it focuses on 5 different value categories. And some of those categories, we're going to be looking at animal welfare, valued workforce. We also have environmental sustainability, community-based economies, local community-based economies, and also community food and nutrition. But obviously, with this year, our most focus on is like the environmental sustainability. We're definitely going to touch base a little bit more, especially through like our panel discussion. But, we're just also seeing how we can strengthen that equity and resilience in so many of our different pathways that we have with our food supply chain. The Good Food Purchasing Program does center around the experiences and voices of the underrepresented. And usually those are, when we think of different groups, we think about women and youth and people of color, and just also like just those groups that have been marginalized by our food systems, injustices, and just how we could also address them too with some of those issues. But looking at some of those value categories and how, we do have like the initiative overall, and how we're able to implement the initiative is through the Good Food Purchasing Program. And as I mentioned, like with the 5 different value categories, we are looking at several of these, and I do kind of just briefly want to touch on them. But, when we're looking at like our different value categories, we have, our local and community-based economies. How can we strengthen equity and resilience in the local economy? How, institutional procurement and related strategies could prioritize local suppliers, especially those small and mid-sized farms, food businesses, and food producers that are either privately or cooperatively or nonprofitly owned and operate within, a 250-mile radius. How can we also prioritize suppliers that are, either entrepreneurs or just of, different food businesses of, of people of color or community members that have also been impacted by current and historic economic marginalization? How can we also build partnerships within our community members to ensure that food products and menus reflect and the interests and cultures of everyone that they serve? Some of these institutions too also, serve in certain communities, and how is that community also reflected by the food that they serve? We're also looking at, our valued workforce too, ensuring some of like the food vendors and suppliers respect workers' rights and also, comply with labor laws through contractual requirements, and then also enforcement. We're also looking at animal welfare, reducing, either our total usage of animal products or, weights, and just overall, their source humanely too, and making sure that animals are also treated right. And then also, when we're looking at our community health and our nutrition, we are also thinking about, institutional procurements as related to like, strategies focused around community health and nutrition. When we are able to imply in that, we are able to create health and resilient communities. How are we partnering with our communities to improve their health and promote and expand access to nutrition, nutritious food that's culturally relevant, again, prioritizing food that's minimally processed, and that's going to include fruits and vegetables, and all different, plant forward foods that honor communities and, their traditions, and then also, reducing the amount of like chronic diseases too. And then also, with our environmental sustainability, how are we purchasing environmentally sustainable foods from suppliers that are either, community health oriented, also, understanding our universal rights to clean air and water, the reduction and elimination of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, improving our soil health and carbon, reducing our carbon emissions, fossil fuel energy, protection of water and resources, and ecological resilience too, that, we're also trying to promote, reducing the food waste, greenhouse gases. And those are just a couple of details, that go within our environmental sustainability. But, again, just kind of seeing how that overall, just to give some examples from our the core values of how, we're able to kind of shift that purchasing power to have a more values-based procurement.
Alex, this
Yes.
is Mabel. I'm just going to jump in with a friendly reminder to speak slowly. We do have live interpretation, so we want to be able to capture all the great information that you're sharing. So that's a reminder for all our speakers today, but I'll let you continue. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thank you for the reminder. I'll make sure to talk slowly. Okay. So going into now, we're learning about the program and just seeing how a lot of like the implementation has been taking place. I do want to kind of give a background to how that actually started. It has been inspired first actually in Los Angeles with the public schools. And then that was actually back in 2013, and then later on got adopted nationwide. But it was actually built off of existing work of city and county different agencies to incorporate local health and sustainable foods. And then during one of our summits in the past recent years, we were trying to see how we can leverage like one of our food policy summits as a vehicle to promote the Good Food Purchasing Program, and obviously collect, just different support, not only just from different agencies, but also from government too, with like our mayoral candidates. At the time, that was when we had our 2016 election in Chicago, and just also just being able to kind of leverage that to see how we could also bring that, the initiative into the city and Cook County. So how that ended up looking like was that later on in June 2017, the program itself was adopted by the Chicago Public Schools. Well, they actually adopted the wellness policy that committed to the Good Food Purchasing Program. Later on in the fall, we also had the Park District that adopted the Good Food Purchasing Program. And then the city in Chicago actually passed a resolution to adopt the GFPP overall. And then a year later, we also had Cook County adopt GFPP resolution. So over here, I actually am showing just some of the institutions and agencies that ended up adopting GFPP. So we are looking at over here, Chicago Public Schools, the Park District, as mentioned, Chicago Department of Family and Support Services, city colleges, Department of Aviation, Cultural Affairs and Special Events, Department of Assets and Information, Department of Procurement, Chicago Housing Authority, and then our Cook County Department and agencies. We had Cook County Sheriff's Office, Juvenile Temporary Detention Center, Department of Corrections, which of course we listed here. We have some of them right here in our panel. And then our Cook County Health and Hospitals and the Bureau of Asset Management. And then one exciting one too, that recently last year, we had Rush Hospital also adopt our GFPP. So they became actually nationwide our 67th institution. So we're really excited just to kind of learn more about that. But overall, what, we're looking at like the horizon, what has been possible in recent years in 2022 up until this year, we're just trying to see and like work on like how we can build on this GFPI ecosystem. We are looking obviously with the implementation, how can we leverage the Good Food Purchasing Program and institutional relationships to change those procurement laws, policies, procedures, practices, but also to, thinking about on the other end of, our food suppliers and just all the other food producers too that, are trying to get into some of these pathways, how we could also leverage funding opportunities to also, have that investment back into like the food producers, the growers and the suppliers. And then obviously, with all the shifts and changes, how we can also shift the culture around community food access sites to be responsive and accountable to like new recipients and the workers and the food producers too. And overall, like this is where, just kind of seeing from like our ecosystem, but then also to knowing that, as we are not really necessarily ending here in 2024, but there is a whole shift happening right now with the Good Food Purchasing Initiative, where right now we're actually, as part of one of our shifts, is that we are transitioning to a coalition model, which we're very excited. And tomorrow during the unconference space, we are going to have a session just talking more about that. We'll also recognize too, like just because, we have the Good Food Purchasing Program here, there are other institutions too that are already taking initiatives and steps towards a more resilient food system, and how that could also be, what are ways that we could support some of those initiatives too, and like other ways that we could also leverage some of the resources that we have here. But with that, I'm going to pause here. And then again, if you do have any questions too about our, just a Good Food Purchasing Program, the initiative, please let us know too, like throughout like the chat, or you could also, I'll provide my information at the end. But again, we do kind of want to emphasize too that there has been work being done. And then I want to make sure, we are able to share some of those progress, successes, challenges. So I am actually going to welcome back our panelists here, and then we could kind of get started into some of our panel questions. And then, yeah, we'll go from there. So again, thank you, Justine, Erica, Antonio, and Kevin. So I kind of just want to get started too with, obviously you'll introduce yourselves and your the background of your institution, but if we could actually just like learn more about, what your institution provides, just the current process of GFPP, the Good Food Purchasing Program, and yeah, just, if you can share, what your day-to-day looks like, the meals that you provide, or what are some of like, support that you all give to your institutions, that'd be great. And then we could actually start off with Justine. That's okay.
All right. Hello again, everybody. As I mentioned before, I'm speaking on behalf of Chicago Public Schools. So we are currently the 4th largest school district in the nation. We have around 650 school sites. And currently we have 2 food service management companies that we work with. So the majority of our schools we call cooking schools, and they are managed through Airmark. And then we have about 100 sites that are managed through Open Kitchens. And you might be familiar with Open Kitchens. They are local to Chicago. So as Alex mentioned, we have been participating in GFPP since 2017. And since that year, it's been written into our local school wellness policy. And as I was thinking about this discussion today and preparing, I was thinking about how beneficial it has been to write some of these different pieces and priorities around GFPP into our contracts, into our policy. It's really helped make more staying power as there's turnover or shifts in priorities at the district level. So that's one thing I did want to highlight, is that it is included in our wellness policy. We completed our first full baseline assessment with GFPP in 2022, but it actually looked at our data, our school year purchases from 2018 to 2019. So Alex gave a big overview of GFPP, and one of the things that we focus on within all of those different components is the data collection, because that's a really big component when it comes to us understanding how we're doing with GFPP and where we want to go within good food purchasing. So that has been a big focus for us this school year, and working with our vendors on that process is just an ongoing discussion with them and understanding the needs there. And our plan right now is to do another data collection of this current school year's food purchases over the summer. So we're really looking forward to that. Our initial baseline assessment was just reflective of our one vendor of having Aramark. So we're excited to see what kind of changes have happened. Obviously, a lot has changed since 2018 and 2019. So we do expect, to see some progress in different areas and be able to use that as a jumping off point for wherever we want to go next when it comes to good food purchasing. I'll close there and bop it over to Erica.
Thank you, Justine. So as I mentioned, my name is Erica Block, and I'm the Senior Director of Food Nutrition Services, both for Rush University Medical Center, which is our large academic medical center on the west side of the city, and Rush Oak Park Hospital, which is a small community hospital in Oak Park. And I oversee both the patient and the retail program. So we actually started our good food purchasing program journey as part of the Chicago cohort for good food purchasing. And that's where we really started to learn about the GFPP Good Food Purchasing Program initiatives. We were thrilled to sign on to the Cool Food Pledge as well as the Good Food Purchasing Program in 2022. And in 2023 at the end. And we were actually excited to just learn that our data for the first year is finally available. So we'll be delving into that and making some great, hopefully moves to move the needle on that program to gain more stars and continue to grow our journey with the Good Food Purchasing Program. We've done a lot at Rush on the waste side, and we continue to move the needle there. We had already started purchasing more local products and are thrilled with the partnerships we've gained through the Good Food Purchasing initiative to expand those local purchases, which has really been helpful in finding and connecting with those local distributors and farms and things. So we've been excited about that, and we look forward to continuing to move on our journey. And I'm going to turn it over to, I believe it's Antonio.
Thank you. Again, good afternoon. Antonio Porter, Director of Programming for Cook County Sheriff's Office at the Cook County Jail. I'll speak more so on programming that we do with individuals in custody that kind of relates to GFPP, one of which is our urban farming program, where participants are growing vegetables, herbs, different also plants on two of our gardens that we have on the site, on the compound, which those of you don't know, Cook County Jail is one of the largest single site facilities. So we have the acreage to have two different gardens set up. We participate in 2 farmers markets each year to sell the produce that's harvested. That again, the participants who are detained at the jail kind of oversee and run throughout the garden season. And then recently, we've had our apiary program, bee program set back up. And so We sell anything from eggplant to honey, and then all proceeds that are received from the farmers markets are put back into the program and then utilized for different services or programming needs for those detained. And then any kind of overage or things we weren't able to sell at the farmers market, we donate to a few different local organizations for food pantries, or in the past, we've donated them to the Lincoln Park Zoo for their cafeteria there. And then the other program that we have on site is more for the culinary arts. Both are kind of workforce development, but the second one is more so towards this is Recipe for Change, which had some recent news coverage on the chef who founded it, Chef Bruno. And so that program teaches various culinary art skills for the participants. And then they have an actual pizza kitchen in one of our divisions. And so the men and women can participate. And so these are just a few programs too, but they're mighty in what they do and in the reach that they have. And I'll pass it over to my colleague Kevin, who can talk more about inside the jail food service.
Thank you. Yep, my name's Kevin Smith again. I'm the senior director at Cook County Jail. I've been working here for just over a year now, and the Cook County Department of Corrections and the Cook County Sheriff's Office, I believe, has been a member of GFPP since 2019, and that was CBM Premier, which is the company that manages the food service here, was part of the contract rule that we participate in GFPP. And we're currently wrapping up our baseline assessment with all of the actionable items due April 1st. So we've been working diligently to get after all of our vendors and make sure that they get all that information back to us. And we've been doing really successful. So I'm excited to see the results of the baseline assessment. Currently, we're serving an average population of about 4,700 inmates. That was down from about 6,000 just about 6 months ago with the implementation of the pretrial fairness act. And you know, we have a contracted menu here, and we have security requirements, so we have a lot of specialized products. So when it comes to purchasing, we're a little bit different than your most average food service company, but we've really focused here on waste reduction. And I'm super happy to report that we've definitely focused on some local purchasing, and that is definitely a result of our participation in GFP. So back to Alex.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's just like very excited just to see all the different levels of GFAP that everyone's at. And just also just like the data collection, which I know takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So definitely, yeah, just really looking forward just to see how, you know, with that data collection, like what are the next steps after that? So kind of talking about that too, how do you all define sustainable food sourcing within the context of your institution or organization? And this one will be more open floor, so whoever wants to jump in.
So I can start. I wish I had a really nice succinct way to define sustainable food sourcing, but instead I have a couple bullet points. I would say the first thing that comes to mind for us and what we have done historically at CPS is think about local procurement. So we really try to prioritize products that are produced. Maybe it's a business that's local to us, or the product's actually grown locally to us. So for us, local is defined as within 350 miles. We also try to prioritize minority-owned businesses and growers. We, over the last several years, have thought more about what plant-based items that we can infuse into our menus. If you're familiar with school food, you know that we're required to serve fruits and vegetables, of course, but we have thought more about where we can do vegetarian or vegan items more often on our menus as well. And then, of course, nutrition criteria and nutrition guidelines are really important to us too. So this is thinking about proteins that are antibiotic free, minimally processed items, things of that nature. And then I know a few other panelists mentioned waste reduction. This is another area that we are also continuing to think about too, whether it's training on forecasting at our school level, inventory management, as well as, school-based initiatives like what to do with leftover food. So yeah, those are kind of like the big areas that we think about when we are defining sustainable sourcing at CPS.
I can take it from there. So as I had recently referred to, we operate at the jail within confines of contractual menu and security requirements. So a lot of our food is industry specific, and we have limited suppliers that produce that food. So I spend a lot of time communicating to local vendors like this specific need of ours and help them understand. And usually they can't always meet the needs of those very specialized products. So sustainable food sourcing is finding what fits in our menu and linking with local providers. We have flexibility with items like produce and bread and dairy, and that's where we can focus on the purchasing. Some of the changes we've implemented in the past year include meatless Mondays, and that we do our dinner entrees. We utilize soy TVP as the protein portion, and that's textured vegetable protein is the protein portion of those meals. And also the religious meals. We've made some changes to our religious meals in the past year that also utilize soy TVP and introduce a lot more vegetarian meals into the facility.
I can go too. So we've been thinking a lot about this. Our manager of sustainability for the organization, as well as I, have been collaborating on actually writing a policy for our organization that focuses on sustainable food. So as we're thinking about writing that policy and thinking about the definition to us for sustainability in the food sourcing, really, we're thinking about working to decrease the environmental impact associated with our sourcing, our ordering, our delivery, our preparation, and disposal or repurposing of our food. So that's kind of the succinct definition that we've sort of come up with for how we're moving forward with our thinking on policy.
Great. Thank you all for sharing. Also too, just kind of thinking about, just how you're sustainably sourcing and just, with the different food items that you bring in. Also acknowledging too, we are in hard economic times and just like the prices are up right now. How do you balance the cost effectiveness of sourcing food sustainably with the nutritional needs of your meal recipients?
I will start us off on that one. So if you are familiar with school meals, and it kind of sounds similar to Kevin, where it's like We have a lot of restrictions. We try not to think of them as restrictions, but we operate within a lot of different nutrition guidelines. It is a heavily regulated area of food service in the school food space. So really everything in K-12 is about balance. That's how I like to think about it. And I did see actually a question pop up in the chat box about how we engage with students, and our annual school food survey is actually live right now. It closes tomorrow. So we have a bunch of different ways that we engage with students, and we actually included 2 different questions on this survey that try to get at understanding how our students prioritize local foods or different sustainability efforts, because I'm sure, as with everybody on this call, we're all trying to balance a million different priorities. So you really have to decide, where are you going to put what eggs are you going to put in what basket, right? So we want to hear from students, and we want to hear from parents, and we want to understand, where sustainability, where local food procurement, all these kinds of things, how do they prioritize that for themselves so that we can try to align our priorities with their priorities. So that's one way that we try to find that balance, is looking at what priorities our students have, and then also operating within those nutrition guidelines. We look for grants. We're currently using the Local Food for Schools grant through next December, and have found some really great items to add on to our menu that are local and get kids excited, like fun fruit. And then, yeah, I think I'll stop there, but it is, I think, overall just a challenging balance, but finding those priorities and really centering the customer has been where we're trying to find that balance.
I can add to that as well. We do something like a little special that is pretty common practice in correctional institutes, and that is that we ask for opportunity purchases when they're available. So we can utilize large amounts of non-perfect food or food that might be nearing expiration and reduce waste in that way, and keep that food from going into the trash or becoming waste, and still serve like a good nutritious product. So we do have flexibility with menu substitution as long as we're meeting nutritional needs. Like I said, we can also purchase non-perfect items. So sadly, sometimes food is made that doesn't meet the spec of the buyer. And that might be the color is off by a shade, or when they froze it, it married to other products. So most kinds of kitchens can't utilize a lot of that product. So that's something kind of specific to us, where we try to participate with that. And I always discuss this when I speak with vendors, especially like produce vendors, about, we can be a partner in this way as well.
Great. I'm going to jump into our next question that kind of goes into more of like, those vendors that you all had mentioned. But can you share some of those examples of successful collaborations with local farmers or food producers to source sustainable ingredients or products as well?
Sure, I can start with this one. So we are actually thrilled because we recently started partnering with Common Market. And in partnering with Common Market, we've actually been able to start purchasing all of our milk from a local farm in Wisconsin. And by doing that, it's bringing in milk that's fresher, it lasts longer, wonderful taste, and just knowing where it's coming from, the transparency, and being able to share that with our patients and our retail customers has been fabulous. So that's a great new addition to our program.
I can piggyback on that as well. And I'm super proud to always talk about the relationship we've also built with Common Market. Last year, I linked up with Common Market through GFPP, and I was super happy for us to be their first customer, and to start purchasing our apples from them. So that diverted our spend away from a larger, not local company. And we were able to purchase local apples from Fram Orchids in the growing season. And then through changes made at the Common Market, we're now able to buy from them year round. So super exciting. We also, through the same channel, linked up with Midwest Foods, and we utilized them for grab and go. We were self-producing grab and go, but we just weren't the pros at it. So, and Midwest Foods is really local. They're making the foods like very close to us. So, and now we have a commitment to continue to utilize both these partners for the foreseeable future.
And I can answer this, but in a different way. Again, with our programming being individuals in custody, our participants, what's grown locally in our gardens through this program. We partner with a lot of restaurants and chefs in primarily downtown Chicago, but throughout the Chicagoland area that are looking to source locally grown foods, and they'll purchase the produce and the herbs and things from the gardens. I think a question might have asked something I saw in the chat around, utilizing what's grown in the garden at the jail. It's, although we are on a large acreage, it's not that big of a garden, so we don't produce enough produce and herbs and things like that could be utilized in the kitchen for the meals for those detained at the jail. But now almost 10 years or even more, this program has been in place, and we have more restaurants joining every year to purchase these the produce and food that's grown locally for their restaurants.
We have a variety of different partnerships that we've done. I want to shout out our vendor Open Kitchens for working with many different local folks over the last year or two. SIFPAC actually helped connect us with Phoenix Bean Tofu. So now the tofu that you see on the Open Kitchens menus is all local from Phoenix Bean. They've also been working with Gotham Greens. We served a really, really tasty pesto a month or two ago using local basil from Gotham Greens. And then a mainstay on our menus district-wide is a drumstick from Miller Farms. That's cooked from raw drumstick, antibiotic-free, that we've been serving, I think, for at least like the last 10 years. And we keep that on the menu 2 times a month. So yeah, lots of different local collaborations that we've had, and always looking for others at CPS.
Great, thank you all for sharing that. And it's just exciting just to also hear about like the different partners and just local vendors that we're able to kind of get from. But also too, like, what are some challenges that you all face when you're sourcing food sustainably, and how do you overcome them? And what other challenges that you also might see?
I would say our biggest challenge is our scale. And we aim to, serve the same thing across the city. We don't want to just provide, a small group of schools, one specialty item. We really try to avoid that. I would say that is one of our challenges. Another challenge is we do have commitments to purchasing commodity products, and you really can't guarantee that those are local. They are made in America, so that's good. And we know we're supporting local farmers, or sorry, American farmers through the meal program. But that is just one kind of piece that doesn't always fit nicely within the GFPP program. So we do try to work around that by, taking advantage of all of the resources that we do have in the city of Chicago. We are thinking about what kind of produce we can grow on our school sites that could be used in our kitchens, in our cafeterias. And then another thing that we've been thinking about this school year is the fresh fruit and vegetable program. This is a program where students at about, I think it's like 100 or so of our schools are in. It's a separate federal program, They get a fresh fruit and a fresh vegetable snack once a week. And we've been thinking about how we can bring in more local produce through that program too. So some just kind of different ways that we're trying to work around some of those challenges here at CPS.
Right, if we could also move on, just kind of just thinking too with like I know some of the questions here in the chat as well, just talking about some of like the meal recipients, but if you could talk a little bit more about how can like meal providers or just as you all are sourcing food or different products, how do you engage with like your community, your meal recipients to raise awareness about the importance of sustainable food sourcing?
Someone else has to start. Somebody else.
So with Common Market, we also started buying some, and we're still kind of working on this, but started by some products that we run out of our retail operation at the jail. And we make sure that we utilize some marketing materials up there to show that we're serving locally produced items. And I think the people in Chicago like to eat food that's from Chicago. So just utilizing marketing materials.
I think for us with the Recipe for Change program, again, I'm speaking from the programmatic aspect of the sheriff's office. In the culinary arts training that they receive, they go over, purchasing and things like that. And a lot of the food that they utilize are grown locally. And the chef goes over like decision making, and then even we don't do this anymore, but beforehand, any used oil that they had from their program would be utilized for a biodiesel program that we once had to, not have to kind of have that waste of oil and things like that. So they try to find more innovative ways to engage the participants in the educational aspect of the program while they're learning to become chefs and things like that. But there's, we get feedback from them from both programs, our Urban Garden and Recipe for Change, on ways that we can improve and things that they are looking to learn. So that's one aspect.
I would say this is an area of opportunity for us in just communicating what we've been doing. I do feel that our students are, they're sustainability minded. They're all thinking about this. Climate change is at the forefront for them. So we feel like we have the responsibility to do a lot of this work for them because it's their future, right? That's what we're here for in the school system. But I do think, again, we could do better with communicating what we've been doing. Some of the some of the things we have done over the years is we include different language on our menus around, we label things local, we label things antibiotic free. We'll have different like promotions or different nutrition guidelines that we're following listed on our website. Sometimes we'll have special menu days to highlight different sustainability initiatives, like an Earth Day special menu, or we've done plastic-free lunch day a couple times. So different things like that to kind of highlight that we are thinking about sustainability in the lunchroom.
So we have a wonderful manager of community health that really focuses on that piece out in the community. And she really helps to get local partners to participate in our Veggie RX program and our Food as Medicine program. And they're doing a great job, I think, to get local participation into those programs.
Right. Well, you kind of set us up, Erica, for our next question, but just kind of thinking overall, I want to emphasize a lot that, this work, you can't do it alone. And, you need a whole team to back you up, or also just a whole support system. But just kind of thinking that too, this does take a little bit more motivation and just an extra step. But I will also want to ask you all, what motivated you all, either personally or maybe with your institution, just to align within like the Good Food Purchasing Program. And yeah, we all could kind of share that a little bit.
I can kick us off. I would say the big motivation here is that we're using federal dollars to feed a lot of students every single day. And like I said before, sustainability and the environment are important to our student body. So all of that kind of trickles up to centering GFPP, and that's really why it's an important part of what we do here.
For us, it really aligns well with our anchor mission and our goal to push health equity. And as a mother of 3, I think it's important thinking about the future for my children and the rest of the children.
Yeah, so GFPP and Cook County predated me arriving here. And I have deep concern for the direction of our world environment, and I live to do what I can to improve the earth for the upcoming generations, but there's only so much any single one of us can do. So participating in GFPP it's a collection of people, and we're making a concerted effort to improve our world environment in the right direction. And I'm happy to be a part of that.
And for me, I'm new to this aspect of the coalition. I was brought on to talk more about it, but from a programming standpoint, we feel if there's anything that we can do to help, one, develop skills and job opportunities for those detained, because they're pre-trial. These individuals could be leaving tomorrow. We want them to have a skill set, or at least a path forward where they can improve their lives for themselves and their families. And we know that some of the skill sets and jobs that can help them in the culinary arts field, but through talking with individuals in custody, agriculture and urban farming were some things that was of interest. And so things that we've expanded on from their interest and what we see on a national model have been our bee program. We've planted milkweed to help with monarch butterflies, and we've started an aquaponics program, albeit small, but it can grow. And from what's grown there, we could again circulate that at some point, hopefully in the jail, but through our partners, chefs and restaurants that purchase from us, that's our way of being connected in this to help others continue to purchase locally and have sustainable practices in everything that they do. I've learned so much about this work, and that's why I kind of said yes that I'll be a partner with the Sheriff's Office in Cook County on this in programming that we do for those detained.
All right. So we have room for like one more question, but just also as we're thinking through, what advice would you give to other food service managers or meal providers or just in general as well, looking to improve like how they are able to sustainably source food, different practices and strategies? If you could all just give, any piece of advice.
Yeah, of course. Mine's super simple. Participate in vendor fairs and meet with other participants. Network and socialize with food service leaders in our community. The relationships that we've built and all the things that we've done, I couldn't have done it without participating in this program and meeting other people.
I would agree. Start networking. I've learned a lot from my peers in California as well as New York, who are a little bit farther along and have a little bit closer resources because their weather's a little different. But I'd say, just start networking, listening, learn from other people, start small. Even a small change can make a difference.
Ditto to everything Erica just said. Definitely don't be afraid to start small. We're like, okay, can we find one yogurt serve that we can swap out? So it's just like one thing at a time, and you never know what's going to roll up to be something that just continues on and to make change in the future.
There we go. Sorry. I'd echo what everyone shared, especially the networking piece. Even if, those, they're not necessarily in the particular roles, you never know other people's networks and connections that they might be able to lend to you. So I share that.
Great, thank you all. Very eager just to kind of hear more, just also from the audience, but I'm gonna actually quickly look through. I know we have been answering some of the questions in the chat already too. But I do also want to acknowledge that, obviously, with the Good Food Purchasing Program and just like the framework, there's a lot of just pieces to the puzzle and uncovering that, happen as well. And then, there's other things that also, are able to come up. And when we look more into, again, our food supply chain system and just seeing all the other issues that also arise with it too, we do acknowledge that, this is just kind of like just scratching at the surface and just trying to see how, with, a lot of like data collection and just action items too, what are other steps that we can take towards a more equitable and transparent system. And I do also acknowledge too, like a lot of the comments too, like in the chat, just making sure, we are acknowledging that. And then there is also too, with a lot of like just further discussion that could happen after this as well. And there will be an opportunity too, where we're gonna, if you're comfortable with sharing your email addresses too, and like in the chat, then we could also talk offline as well. But looking through, I'm seeing if there's any questions.
Yeah, Alex, I can hop in. Some of the questions we're seeing from our audience, thank you so much for being active in the chat. I think this is what's so exciting about our panelists sharing and us interacting and engaging together. We've had some ideas, several programs brought up, such as zero waste programs, farm to table, composting, what growing on CPS owned land. So lots of different programming opportunities. And instead of focusing just on one, I'll open it to the group. What is coming down the pipeline? What are you excited about next? What other programs are you exploring? If we can shift that focus, I know there's many priorities. what is next and what are you most excited about?
So for us here in Chicago, we were excited to start our kitchen organic waste program and our compost actually going to the biodigester in Chicago. So we have our main patient kitchens waste actually going to that biodigester now, and we're ramping up to be able to send our other kitchens waste to that biodigester as well. It was just going to composting, but now it's actually being turned into energy and fertilizer, and we're thrilled for that.
In the jail, we're preparing for HB 3865, which is the outlawing of styrofoam use, single-use styrofoam. We're pretty close now. We're not due to start until January 1, but with that, we're also going to attempt to plan to switch over all of our flatware that we utilize in retail operation, cups and plates, all to compostable products. So we're taking it a step further, and we are trying to implement that ahead of schedule as well.
I've mentioned it a little bit before, but I've been really excited about how we've been using our local food for schools dollars this year. We have a couple things on the pipeline that I think will be really great included on our menus. And we've been trying to prioritize putting these foods on actually as like bonus items. So it's actually giving the kids more food instead of just like replacing an item on the menu. So I mentioned yogurt before. We've also been eyeing through the common market this beef patty that has some beans mixed into it. So instead of like 100% beef patty, it's got some plant-based protein in there. That's something I've been thinking about for a while. So I'm glad to see that we've been having some movement. And then also there's always a lot of work happening on our garden team. I know there's been a lot of questions. I hope I've answered them all in the chat box around the work that our garden team does, whether it's with farm to school programming, cooking programming, getting kids, using their hands in the garden, but also in the kitchen, and really trying to connect classroom with the cafeteria, with the garden, all three of those things. So I don't want to speak to all the work that's happening on our garden team, but I would be happy to connect with you offline if you're interested in hearing more about that.
And then the only other, I think I mentioned it was we're starting up an aquaponics program and utilizing that kind of wastewater to utilize out in the gardens. So increasing that and increasing more of what we grow out into the gardens.
Thank you all.